Welcome back to part 9 of the Neon Genesis Book Club. I know it's been a while, so let's get straight into it. Starting out episode 9, we kind of get Asuka merging into Shinji's, school, his life, and, just getting involved in all the other characters. And it's pretty funny because you can tell everybody loves her. She's getting all these love letters and being the, grumpy personality that she is. You see her crushing them, which was pretty funny. But yeah, everyone seems to be obsessed with Asuka, looks wise. Other than that, we know she's kind of mean. She's not one to be friendly with everybody. But it's a pretty cool introduction to see Asuka outside of the battle, and all the fights and everything. Get to see how she merges with everybody else. Moving forward, we get to see Ritsuko getting, rizzled up by Kaji. And it's pretty funny because we see that Misato's out there kind of looking at them and they're like, we can't do this with her looking at us. And it's kind of funny, he's just joking around, but he definitely got under Misato's skin. After all the jokes, they're kind of interrupted by this alert sign that an angel has appeared. And, this is one of my favorite angels. And I don't know if people have a favorite angel or that's kind of weird, but I always thought this one was pretty interesting. And without two, you can't really beat it. But yeah, this is kind of the first time that we get to see Asuka and Shinji working together outside of the last fight. And it's pretty cool. However, this angel, it's meant to, the way it's matched up is not very fair for how they are, because Asuka's a very let me do it and stand back. And Shinji's like, okay, just let, he's going to do his thing to help. However, everything they're doing doesn't work because, they sliced this thing right in half and then it just re-heals almost in a new way. And so this thing just proceeds to absolutely obliterate the both of them, which was pretty funny. And we kind of get this funny shot of them hanging upside down. Obviously, things did not go good. We don't get the exact scene of seeing this both happen, but it was still interesting. And they're kind of arguing, this was your fault. This is your fault. You didn't help me. Y'all didn't do anything. But, just how little kids do, which is hilarious. Interestingly enough, though, we get to see that they actually did something to damage an angel for once. And they kind of they minimized, or, they paused. They put a pause on, the fight because the thing's healing and stuff. And so we kind of get them moving back into the house. And this is where things get a little weird. I would say it's good character development, but the way this is done is very strange. And I would also like to say that I'm almost watching a different kind of version than I watched on Netflix. So I'm kind of seeing I don't know if there's differences from what I'm showing you here in the Netflix version. If anybody in the comments knows, let me know. But yeah, so basically we're going to follow up into Shinji and Asuka needing to be able to match movements so that they can fight this thing and destroy the core at the same time. And as they're learning to do so, you can kind of see that they're having a hard time. However, when they finally agree to link up, they match up and they start getting their stuff done because Asuka doesn't want to be replaced by Rei, which is pretty funny. It's the one thing that made her snap out was to realize that somebody else is there that could do her job if she wanted to, which makes me wonder, why didn't they just use Rei? Maybe I missed something. If anybody knows that in the comments, let me know as well. And so this is where things get a little weird. We kind of have Asuka and it looks like she goes to the bathroom, she comes back and she lays right next to Shinji. And Shinji's like, oh my God, a girl's laying in my bed right now. And he thinks that she wants to kiss him. He's just a boy, And so he goes up to kiss her and then he realizes she's crying and basically saying mom. And we realize that Asuka really is just missing her childhood, missing her mother, although we don't know much about that yet. And speaking of freaky, we get Kaji and Misato getting, crazy in the elevator, and Kaji don't care. He's out there just, spitting game, I guess he used to in the past. However, she says we can't be doing that here, and, the typical professional BS that she's going to say. And we get a little meeting between Ritsuko. Do I say her name right? Ryusuke. I always have a hard time saying that, so I apologize if anybody's watching this and it bothers them. However, next up we get the fight, and this is one of the best fights in the show for sure. I mean, there's a lot of good fights in this anime, but the way that everything's, kind of synchronized, and also Neon Genesis does a great job, with like the soundtracks that they use. It's almost like, you get a lot of like upbeat music and stuff, but this is just like, it's like magical. I don't, if that's the best way to put it. And, they're coordinated. They're absolutely obliterating this angel, and, they're synced perfectly, I guess you could say. And so when they go and the best part about this is that the shots of them like synchronizing perfectly are really cool. And as we go, they end up beating the angel, but I just want y'all to like take the time to look at some of these shots and just like the way Neon Genesis is drawn, the way the music combines with the fights. Like, there's something really special about this anime, and that's why I love it so much. But as we go on, they end defeating this angel, coordinated combat, and they save the day pretty much. And that's how we end this episode. Now it's funny because you got to remember they're kids, and so basically the whole world is like depending on these 2 kids to beat these angels, 3 kids including Rei, although we don't get to see Rei in as much action, but everybody's cheering. But of course, you kind of get the higher ups like, what are these kids bickering about afterwards? But they did it, and I think this episode was really fun just because the music, the art style, the fight, the way everything was just incredibly put together. I really enjoyed it. If you enjoyed this episode, let me know what you think down in the comments below. I appreciate it, and have a great day.